If you've been waiting for the first real hint of what Apple is doing with the iPhone 18 Pro Max, this new leak is exactly the kind of detail that can quietly tell a bigger story. A dummy unit of the iPhone 18 Pro Max has reportedly surfaced. And while the phone looks very close to the iPhone 17 Pro Max at first glance, there are a few changes that could matter a lot, especially if you care about cameras, screen design, and even whether your current case will still work. What's being claimed? The iPhone 18 Pro Max dummy unit suggests Apple is keeping the overall form factor almost the same, but it may be increasing the camera lens size, slightly increasing the thickness, and shrinking the dynamic island by around 25%. And that last part could be the most noticeable change the second you look at the front of the phone. Let's start with the overall design, because this is where some people might say, so it's basically the same phone? From the outside, the iPhone 18 Pro Max appears extremely similar to the iPhone 17 Pro Max. The frame, the general layout, and the footprint look close enough that the dummy unit reportedly fits inside existing iPhone 17 Pro Max cases. That's important because it hints Apple isn't doing a dramatic redesign. This year at least not for the Pro Max, and for a lot of users, that's actually good news because accessories are expensive, and nobody wants to replace everything every single year. But there's a big warning here. Fits in a case doesn't mean fits in every case. If your case is soft and flexible, like a TPU case, it can tolerate small differences. If your case is rigid, ultra-slim, or designed with extremely tight tolerances, even a small change in thickness or camera cutout sizing can make it a headache. So yes, this iPhone 18 Pro Max leak suggests many iPhone 17 Pro Max cases might still work, but if you're using a tight structured case, don't be surprised if it's a little too snug or the camera area doesn't line up perfectly. Now let's talk about the camera system because this is one of the clearest physical changes shown by a dummy unit. According to the measurements being discussed, Apple may be increasing the diameter of the camera lenses. The claim is that lens diameter goes from about 16.15 millimeters on the iPhone 17 Pro Max to about 16.5 millimeters on the iPhone 18 Pro Max. That sounds tiny, but in smartphone camera hardware, small size increases can be meaningful. When a camera module grows, it usually means Apple is making room for something bigger sensors, different optics, improved stabilization, or changes that help capture more light. And if you've followed iPhone camera upgrades over the years, you know Apple tends to push the Pro and Pro Max models hardest when it comes to photography and video. Even a small bump in lens size can be a clue that Apple is trying to squeeze out better low-light performance, sharper detail, improved dynamic range, or more stable videos, especially for creators who shoot a lot on their phone. Just the lens diameter. The iPhone 18 Pro Max dummy unit leak also suggests the phone could be slightly thicker overall. The numbers being mentioned are a move from around 13.13 millimeters on the iPhone 17 Pro Max to about 13.78 millimeters on the iPhone 18 Pro Max. That is not a massive jump, and in daily use, you might not even notice it. But it's still worth paying attention to because Apple doesn't usually add thickness for no reason. A bit more thickness could mean a larger battery, which would be a huge win if Apple is aiming for better battery life. It could also mean the internal camera hardware is bigger and needs more depth, especially if Apple is upgrading sensors or stabilization systems. It could also be tied to internal layout changes, durability adjustments, or even thermal improvements for sustained performance. We can't confirm the why from a dummy unit, but when the body gets slightly thicker and the camera system grows, it's usually because something inside is changing. Now here's the part that's getting the most attention: the dynamic island. According to the dummy unit comparison, Apple may be shrinking the dynamic island on the iPhone 18 Pro Max, and the estimate being thrown around is roughly 25% smaller than the current model. The reported measurement is about 14.98 millimeters wide, compared to about 20.06 millimeters on the iPhone 17 Pro Max, if that's accurate. This could be the most obvious visual difference on the entire phone, even if the design is nearly identical. From the sides and the back, the front experience changes a lot when the cutout shrinks. A smaller dynamic island means more usable screen space, a cleaner look, and less distraction when watching videos, gaming, reading, or browsing. And from Apple's perspective, shrinking the dynamic island is also a logical step toward the long-term goal, reducing visible interruptions on the display until we eventually get something closer to a true all-screen iPhone. That said, it's important to be honest about the rumor situation here. Dynamic island reports have been conflicting. Some leaks have suggested it won't change, while others have hinted at bigger front-facing changes in the future, including under-display Face ID. Under-display Face ID would be a major shift, and it's not something you can truly confirm from a simple dummy unit, because a dummy unit doesn't show you the real internal sensor technology. It mainly reflects external dimensions. So the best way to view this iPhone 18 Pro Max dummy unit leak is as an early sign of direction, not final confirmation. Dummy units can be very accurate, especially when accessory makers and supply chain sources are involved. But they can also be based on prototypes, early CAD information, or incomplete details that change before the final product launches. Still, if you zoom out, the overall picture here makes sense. Apple may be playing it safe on the exterior, keeping the iPhone 18 Pro Max close to the iPhone 17 Pro Max, while refining the parts people use every day, the camera system and the front display experience. For a lot of users, that's not a boring upgrade, because cameras and display interruptions are two of the most noticeable things about modern smartphones. So, what does this mean if you're thinking about upgrading? If you're coming from an iPhone 14 Pro Max, 15 Pro Max, or older, even a refined iPhone 18 Pro Max could feel like a substantial step forward, especially if the camera hardware upgrade is real and the dynamic island becomes noticeably smaller. If you're on an iPhone 17 Pro Max, the decision will probably depend on how significant the real-world camera improvements are, whether the smaller dynamic island changes the feel of the phone enough for you, and what other internal upgrades Apple brings, like performance gains, efficiency, or RAM improvements that help with advanced features. And yes, the case situation matters too. The leak suggests many iPhone 17 Pro Max cases should still fit the iPhone 18 Pro Max. But if you're using a tight-fitting case, you may need to test it door. Be prepared to upgrade your case if the thicker body or larger camera cutout becomes an issue. Now, let's talk timeline. The expectation is that Apple will unveil the iPhone 18 lineup in September, following the typical iPhone release schedule, and there's another big rumor floating around the same time. Apple could introduce an iPhone Ultra, and there's continued talk about Apple's first foldable iPhone. If Apple is preparing a new category, whether it's a foldable iPhone, an ultra-tier iPhone, or both, it would make sense for the Pro and Pro Max to focus on refinement rather than a full redesign. Apple could be saving the truly dramatic design leap for a new model line, while keeping the Pro Max stable and premium for users who want the most polished traditional iPhone. So, to sum it all up, this iPhone 18 Pro Max leak suggests three key changes: a slightly larger camera lens system, a small increase in thickness, and a dynamic island that could be around 25% smaller. The phone's overall look remains close enough to the iPhone 17 Pro Max that many existing cases may still fit, though tighter cases might not. And while none of this is official yet, it's exactly the kind of leak that hints at how Apple is thinking, improving the experience in subtle ways that you'll actually notice every day. Now, I want to know what you think. If Apple really gives the iPhone 18 Pro Max a smaller dynamic island and upgraded camera hardware, is that enough to make you upgrade? Or are you holding out for something bigger, like an all-screen iPhone or a foldable iPhone Ultra? Let me know. And if you want the latest iPhone 18 Pro Max leaks the moment they drop, make sure you're subscribed, because as we get closer to September, the details are going to come in fast.